So remember, first thing to do is to notice that you're doing it. Take a breath, pause. Don't engage the avoidance. Don't engage the procrastination for a moment, just a moment. And then notice what comes up. The perspective I'm going to be speaking from here is a first-person experiential one. So it turns out that you can actually get quite far with stuff like procrastination through actually looking into it yourself. And I don't mean looking into it, I don't just mean looking into it by reading a bunch of stuff about it. I mean looking into it by being really, really present with the experience of procrastination and actually inquiring and asking questions of yourself and looking for an embodied understanding of what it is. Procrastination from a first-person experience of it is knowing that I really ought to be doing something else. So there's a should. I should be doing something else. A knowing and often a guilting that I'm not doing the thing that I know is going to move me forward. And coupled with an avoidance. So there's a guilt, but there's also an avoidance and a kind of a desire to lose myself in that avoidance. So that avoidance, it's an experience of avoidance, but that experience looks like me wanting to completely lose myself in something, usually YouTube or games or something that's easy to lose myself in. Whatever it is that is easiest to lose myself in, that's the go-to avoidance. And the desire is like to lose myself in that experience and be safe in it, where I don't feel the uncomfortable feelings that had me procrastinate in the first place. If there's something I need to learn and I don't feel confident at that, and I doubt myself, then if I show up to learn that thing, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And usually the discomfort for me is like a lower body thing. It's not up here, it's in my belly, in my chest. And it's feelings, basically, uncomfortable feelings. And when I kind of step into those uncomfortable feelings, I come out of the procrastination and now I'm with the uncomfortable feelings. And with the uncomfortable feelings comes some kind of meaning, like, oh, I need to study for this test. I haven't done tests in a while, but when I was a student, having to study for this test, I really don't want to. I don't feel confident. I doubt myself. I don't know if I'm going to learn this thing. I don't even know if I want to. There's a lot of meanings like that get created from this basic uncomfortable feeling. And if you look into the uncomfortable feeling, it's some kind of self-doubt, some kind of some fear that you're actually more than what you thought you were. I'll give you an example, and it's identity stuff. So I'll give you an example. Recently, I have been doing some maths for a course I'm taking. And part of my identity up to now has been I'm not very good at maths. I'm not smart at it. I don't get it. I'm slower at it than other people. I'm the artsy type, or whatever, the English kind of like that camp of like English, arts, like I don't fit into this other camp. This other camp isn't natural to me, like the sciences, maths. And I'm not smart in that way, right? This is the internal narrative. And I'm doing this course to partly because I want to overcome that insecurity. And really to change my identity. Now, I'm not saying that, like, what I'm saying is that, like, identity is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you believe you're not good at something, then your actions will reflect that, and then reality will reflect back to you that you're not good at something. Because you won't try as much, you won't do it, you won't think creatively about it. You really believe that you're this way. So for me, if I'm not good at maths, it's like, well, I'm going to avoid maths. I'm going to think of myself as someone who doesn't like it. I'm not going to get enjoyment from it, and so on. But if I actually sit down and do it and try to let go of knowing that I'm not good at it, and just actually look at what's there, and what's there is uncomfortable feelings. Uncomfortable feelings and self-doubt. And then what happens is I go slow. I've developed a lot of capacities in the last 10 years. I've become in many ways smarter than I was when I was at school. But that's not maybe the way to think about it. It's more like I'm more open to being wrong about who I am. And so sitting down and actually working on it, I had some breakthroughs. Like I talked myself through it. I ran into all the old patterns I had that made me think I was bad at maths. For example, I don't check. I try and do a lot of stuff in my head that I could write down, and I don't check things carefully at each step. It's very logical, like checking things at each step, but I wasn't doing that. I was kind of trying to do it in my head. I wasn't very methodical, and I would make a lot of mistakes, and that's why I had this belief I wasn't very good at it. But I observed those patterns and what it was like to experience that. I was watching that. And then I kind of let go of those patterns, and I was able to get further than I got before. I was able to complete this homework for this course, which I felt very proud of because I don't consider myself someone who's good at maths. And now I'm open to the possibility that I might actually have some capacity there that I never saw before. But there was certainly an avoidance and a procrastination around it, right? Like, it was uncomfortable to sit down and have those patterns come up and have my identity challenged like that. And I think procrastination is a bit like that. When I'm avoiding something, it's because I'm afraid of doing that thing, changing who I am. I'll give you another example. Another course I'm doing. Sharing myself on these videos, sharing these thoughts, making things and sharing those. I have a pretty firm identity that when I'm in a small group of people, sharing is easy, but when it's the big wide world, sharing is something I don't do. And I have hyper resistance to it, and I'll procrastinate it a lot. And what that looks like is avoidance, guilting, feeling uncomfortable, being hard on myself about that. Downplaying also the impact of me avoiding it. So I'll kind of think it's fine, and I won't really acknowledge the full impact on me of avoiding the thing. It's another thing about procrastination is you don't have I don't have the short-term experiential, unless I really look, the short-term, there's no acknowledgement of the long-term consequences. There's a kind of delusion that it's okay in the short term, but if you actually look beneath that, you can acknowledge the long-term consequences, and you can acknowledge that actually you are aware that this has an impact on you. And I don't just mean the consequences for your future, I mean the present consequences. So how much life that takes from you is 100 times worse than what you think it does. It's like procrastinating. If you procrastinate all day, you basically, like, for avoiding the discomfort, you've sold your life energy. Because if you did the thing, you'd feel more enlivened, more empowered. So you're actually selling your life energy to avoid that discomfort. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I think we all do it. But I want to come back to, it's worth to look into these things, because we don't often acknowledge the impact of what we do on us in the short term even. No, I'm not talking about the future. I'm talking about the feeling of being alive and connected with yourself is traded off for comfort. Because what you have to do is you have to basically blow up or expand and lose yourself in an aspect of yourself that's not your whole self. You have to kind of go contract into a much smaller experience of yourself, which isn't very alive, it's kind of dead. You know what it's like, right? Feeling guilty, feeling small, feeling like, yeah, kind of contracted sense of self. Feeling avoidant. And even the pleasure isn't that good. It feels kind of dirty. So it's a very limited, it's experiencing only a small part of yourself. And if you were to actually face the discomfort, you'd get bigger, you'd expand yourself straight away in the discomfort. And then if you do the thing, your sense of, you ever do something, you ever procrastinate and then you just do the thing, and how much better you feel, the relief and the sense of expansiveness that gives you. It's because you've literally got bigger. Your sense of self has expanded because you're no longer this like very tiny aspect of yourself. You're no longer like indulging, in a sense, in just the part of you that really doesn't want to feel uncomfortable. You also have a greater sense of agency. If you actually do the thing you've been putting off, you feel empowered, like you actually have a choice. I don't have many regrets in my life, but that's not because there aren't things that I could regret. It's and you know, regret I see is now a positive, because you can learn from real regret. You can learn from and change your behavior. But I wasn't capable of regretting in the past because I was so avoidant. It never seemed like I had a choice. And now I know I have a choice. It's possible to have regret because I've got agency back through, you know, stepping into the discomfort and doing the thing I've been avoiding. Proving to myself that actually I can trust myself and that I have agency in my life. I want to say something else about kind of the moves you can make to start doing this inquiry. The first thing you have to do is to actually just notice that you're procrastinating and pause for a few seconds. And that's the hardest part in some ways, like actually pausing for a few seconds. Because if you pause for a few seconds, if you can pause for a few seconds procrastinating, you've just demonstrated that you have agency, as in you have the ability to make choices about what you do. If you can even focus on your breath for a few seconds, you've proven that. So if you stop procrastinating, the thing about procrastination relies on this kind of mechanism where it feels like you don't have a choice. Sometimes, at least that's what it's like for me. I have a lot of mechanisms around it. like the feeling I don't have a choice. I would even use, years ago, I would even use like free will arguments to justify my procrastination. Like I don't really have a choice. There's no really, so your mind is going to use all kinds of strategies, right? You will use all kind of strategies to avoid feeling uncomfortable. And it really is just that. It's an experience of feeling discomfort in some way. And that might be quite a bit of discomfort, but the impact of feeling the discomfort is so much less than the impact of procrastinating and avoiding. Like it's so much less bad to just feel uncomfortable. And then from that place of being uncomfortable, realizing, oh, hey, I have a choice. I can do something uncomfortable now. I can sit down, I can start studying. I can face the blank page, right? I can start to talk myself through it. And then you get all these like positive ways that you can work with the procrastination. Like the first thing you can do is just sit. So after you've stopped, you can sit and just notice what it feeling's like. What's the embodied experience? Where are you feeling uncomfortable in your body? What's that actually like? Do you feel fear? What's that like? Where do you feel it? Can you notice that it's a sensation, right? Can you focus on the sensation part of it? And then maybe you can look at also the stories that you have around it. What is the fear saying? If I sit at a blank page, I won't know what to write. I might fail. It's not gonna be good, whatever I make. Whatever it is, the thoughts, you can be with the thoughts too. Just notice them and don't fight them. And then you can just sort of talk yourself through it, right? You can talk yourself through it. And then every personal growth technique or even spiritual practice can help with this. And so there's many different ways of, once you're there with the feeling, once you've actually made the choice to sit with the feeling, there's a lot you can do at that point. You can start to get curious about it. You can bring some acceptance to it. You can try and have a dialogue with the different parts of yourself. And the more different, and it's a game really, like the more techniques and ways of working with yourself you can discover, it becomes fun to actually work with yourself. Can you reason with yourself? Can you make it so it's a little bit less uncomfortable? That's another way of working with it. Right? Is there a way of breaking stuff down? So you have to stop first before you can do any of that, right? If you're in a procrastination cycle, if you're avoiding something and you don't have a sense of agency, then no amount of techniques are gonna help until you stop and actually realize you have the choice. And then from then you can try a lot of different things. And then the other advice becomes really helpful. And then maybe even knowing about, the science of why you procrastinate. What's our current understanding of what's going on in the brain, right? Like, what about a psychological understanding of why you procrastinate? So you can even use frames and tools to kind of, another one is design. Like, can you design your environment to make it so that you procrastinate less, right? Take advantage of your limited willpower. But before you do anything, you have to notice when the avoidance is there. You have to actually notice that it's happening, and that it's okay to feel the uncomfortable feeling. And really, there isn't ultimately like there are lots of situations in which, for example, for myself, there are a lot of things now I would not procrastinate that I procrastinated in the past. But if you put an uncomfortable enough task in front of me, procrastination's probably going to happen given that context. And that's okay. Like it's relative. Procrastination isn't something about you. So get out of your head the idea that you are a procrastinator. Procrastination is contextual. So if you present someone with an uncomfortable enough thing and the opportunity to avoid doing that thing immediately, then that's the recipe for procrastination. If you give someone a very simple thing that they're very comfortable doing and they have to do it right now, you're not going to get procrastination arise in that context. So it's a context-dependent thing. So there's an understanding and there's a compassion piece as well. Can you actually see that you're in a context in which procrastination makes sense, given how uncomfortable this thing is for you? And from that place, you can start to kind of work with it, get the support and accountability perhaps that you need. Do one of many different things that you can easily, if you start searching around for like working with procrastination, you're going to get many different things you can try. But the first thing is to recognize you can actually choose. I want you to recognize that sometimes you'll also need support. If you're procrastinating something and that's a real challenge, there's something you really want to do, but the procrastination is just so intense and there's no deadline for it, so you can just keep doing it. There's a lot of things you can try, but also don't. Another thing I want to say is that it's okay to get support. So in my case, there's things that in fact, this is one of them, like procrastinating certain things. Despite tons of growth in other areas of life, there are some things that I have procrastinated indefinitely, and to the point where I actually wanted some professional help around it, like actually look into it with a therapist to work out, hey, what's actually going on? And I felt that I just needed that, because despite all the self-inquiry, so there's a self-love piece here too. So for me, despite all the inquiry and self-awareness around it, there are some things that there are good reasons that you might procrastinate something. So for me, I would procrastinate this because I had, and still do have, an intense fear of exposure because of experiences I had being bullied when I was younger. And so I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm just, I'm wanting to point out that, it's more a little bit bigger, it's more of a picture than that. For example, when I'm speaking to you like this, it's coming from a different place than how I am in my day-to-day life. And there's more vulnerability in some ways. And so putting yourself out vulnerably into an unknown space is meant to be, in some ways, scary and very uncomfortable and very exposing. And that's actually very normal, right? But for me, it was compounded by certain experiences I had growing up, which made it just a bit too much to want to share myself. And I think it's important to recognize, to see like, okay, can I give this a try myself? Can I, next time I'm avoiding something, can I make some progress? Can I just notice what's beneath the feeling of avoidance? Like what feeling is there? What part of me is uncomfortable right now? Can I be with that part of myself? As in, when I say be with it, I just mean, can I feel it? Can I let it express itself? Can I have it present rather than suppress it and not have it present, or engage in avoidance, right? Like rather than engage in avoidance, can you just have the avoidance present, the desire to avoid and the pull to avoid? And then if you don't actually engage the avoidance, the stuff beneath it, the thing you're avoiding will come up, right? The feelings around the thing you're avoiding will come up. And if you can do that, if you can take a look and maybe make some progress there, then great. And, if you struggle for years procrastinating the same thing, and really struggling with it, then maybe you could look for support, right? And you can look for support anytime. You can look for support. You can look for accountability too. Sometimes just having a community, of a safe container to do those uncomfortable things in the form of a community or accountability buddies can be enough. That can be enough of a support for you to take the steps that you're wanting to take. And I would also say to really get curious about procrastination and what really is it like? Like, what's really going on in your experience? Because procrastination isn't going to look the same for everyone. There's going to be a pattern that's similar, but your particular way of doing it and being able to stop on a dime and notice that you're actually doing it and make a choice, that's something that there's no amount of knowing or learning knowledge about why you procrastinate absolves you of that responsibility of being able to notice what you're experiencing and to make a choice. You got to be able to do that. So that's worth practicing no matter what. So remember, first thing to do is to notice that you're doing it. Take a breath, pause. Don't engage the avoidance. Don't engage the procrastination for a moment, just a moment. And then notice what comes up. What is the feeling that comes up? What part of you comes up? Do you have any judgments or thoughts come up? Just notice what happens and then lean into the discomfort a little bit. You can even ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What is really scary about this task? Or this thing that I'm avoiding? And if you're earnest and you're authentic with yourself, you'll get an answer as to what's going on. And very often it's going to be a part of you, probably a much younger part of you, that is really scared about failing, not being enough. Some piece of your identity that's not the whole of you that is resisting the thing that you know is going to change you in some way. It's going to change your identity in some way. It's going to give you different beliefs about yourself, or maybe less beliefs about yourself, right? Maybe you're not exactly the way you thought you were. Maybe you're good at maths. Maybe you're good at making videos. Maybe you're, maybe you can do that. Maybe you can public speak. Maybe you could do that thing that you've been putting off. Maybe that is you, the person who can do that. But to actually acknowledge and see that it's you, you might have to be patient and with the parts of yourself that aren't ready to see that, right? Or maybe even letting go of beliefs or limits that you put on yourself, right? So that's an ongoing journey. So we can't ever say we're done with procrastination, because it's contextual and it's always relative. It's always relative to our identity, to the thing we're avoiding, what that means about us, and the uncomfortable feelings and the past history we have that makes us think we're not the person who does the thing we're avoiding, right? So it's always relative and contextual. Let go of the idea that you are a procrastinator, and instead embrace the idea that that is a contextual behavior or experience you can have that completely depends on the situation, right? It's completely relative. And so those are some thoughts I have about it. Hopefully you found it useful, and I'll see you in the next one.